going live on Facebook at the moment, so I'll just take it off and we just start. Yeah, as I said before, we will start with a short song, and then I will start with the introductions of everybody. So good day, everyone. Good day, everyone, and welcome to the first in a series of conversations putting a spotlight on COVID-19 on human rights in South Africa. There's no denying that COVID-19 will continue to have a massive impact on human rights across the world, and more especially in South Africa, a country with the highest number of COVID infections and deaths on the continent, in addition to also being the most unequal society in the world. This series is brought to you by Canada's largest international media development organization, Journalists for Human Rights, through its program to mobilize media in the fight against COVID-19 in partnership with Media Monitoring Africa and Sound Africa. So for the next 9 weeks, we will be putting a spotlight on human rights issues and COVID-19 every Wednesday at midday through conversations with journalists who are being mentored in rights media reporting through the MMFC program. I'm JD Ramalapa, and I'm coming to you from Johannesburg, South Africa. So thank you so much for joining us. Since the first case was recorded in March 2020, South Africa has experienced 2 waves of COVID-19 infections, the second deadlier than the first. Now, experts are warning that a third and even deadlier wave could be approaching. So today we're asking whether local communities can cope with the third wave of COVID-19. Under the spotlight today is a community of Alanskral in South Africa's Limpopo province, whose residents have resorted to digging into manholes to access water after the Sekhukhune municipality failed multiple times to provide them with water. For today's discussion, we have Solofelo Difue, a community journalist with Mukurukuru Media, which is a South African media agency focused on telling the stories of ordinary people, particularly in rural communities, who have been writing about this particular story in the past couple of days. And we are also very fortunate to have Francina Nkosi, a frontline human rights defender, a champion of gender justice and environmental rights in Lephalale, a mining community in South Africa's Limpopo province. Francina is popularly known as the Queen of Human Rights and the voice of the voiceless. She's also the leader of the Württemberg Women Advocacy Organization, a movement that promotes women's empowerment projects and socioeconomic justice around mining communities in South Africa. Good day to you both, and welcome to Spotlight. So I will start with you, Tsulu. Can you tell us how are residents in Alanskral coping at this moment without water?
Hello, everyone. Well, I wouldn't say we are coping, because a lot of them, like you said, have resorted to opening up manholes to be able to access water, and the pipes here have not been maintained for a very long time. There might be a leakage there. Even then, it's still, and the water would still be unsanitary. And I've been living here for as long as I can remember. I was born here, and we've always had problems with water. Even though in 2012 there was a period where we would get a regular supply of water from the municipality, but it was still not enough. Hence, a lot of people have now bought Jojo tanks to be able to deal with the challenges, but it has been so difficult that there are 3 schools here, 2 primary schools and 1 high school. And the people who have been working, the assistant teachers and the general workers, have been complaining about the facilities. They've been complaining about how it's difficult for them to navigate the pandemic, or help the children to navigate the pandemic, whether it's cleaning the classrooms, or cleaning the facilities, or ensuring that children wash their hands. You know, the things that we do to make sure that there won't be a spread of coronavirus. we have had cases, COVID-19 cases here. And like I've spoken to you before, it's I don't know how we were able to contain them, because we know how this virus is, we know how fast it travels. So it has been a miracle so far. It has been a miracle so far, because the pandemic is not going away now. We're not expecting it to be over by tomorrow. So it has been something that it's a life that we've grown accustomed to, but occasionally complain about. You know, you never know how bad the situation is until you explain it to someone else, and you tell them that sometimes you don't get water for a month, and you can tell that they're really shocked by this. To you, you're used to this kind of lifestyle, but when you explain it to someone and they're shocked, and you observe how you observe their reaction, that's when you're able to see that I've not really been living life the way that human beings are supposed to live. It has been really difficult, especially to the businesses and, you know, the preschools here. Yesterday, I spoke to an owner of a preschool, and she's been complaining about how it has been difficult, that some days she had to close the preschool because there wouldn't be water.
So why has it been that the municipality has failed to provide people with water? What's the reason behind it?
You know, I've spoken to the spokesperson of the school district municipality. To him, I'm quoting him right now. I'm saying what he told me, even though I'm paraphrasing a bit. According to him, low-lying areas in the village have been getting water regularly, and that is not true. I live here. I would know if we're getting water. So it really informed me that the municipality does not know how the people are living here, or maybe they do. They just don't really care, because this has been a problem that has been happening for a very long time. And there have been members of the community that have reached out to the president, they've reached out to the government multiple times to try to solve this problem. And there has not been any help. Even there have been, in 2015, one of the members here, you know, it's a group of people, but I only know one. He took the municipality, the local municipality, to a court in Pretoria High Court. It started in 2015. And in 2016, they implemented ways to try and solve the problem. I think it's their way of saying they've solved the problem, even though they haven't really solved the problem, they've just made it worse. They distributed water tanks around the village as a way to try. I don't even know if they are aware how many people live here. I don't know if they are aware of that. But you know, even though there have been water tanks around the village, some of them wouldn't be filled with water. They're rarely filled, like seldomly filled with water. So it has been really challenging, because I remember last year we struggled so much that we went to the nearest Jojo tank that the government provided us with, even though they said that it was supposed to be a temporary problem that we've had for 5 years. I don't know if a temporary problem can exist for 5 years. So we went there and there was no water. If there are people here, this is a low income community. There are people here who don't have transportation. There are people here who are having a hard time making ends meet. And it's already difficult as it is. And the fact that they also have to try to work even harder to get their basic human right is just, it's appalling, to say the least.
So, Tulu, how do you think that, how has COVID-19, or the presence of COVID-19 now for a year, how has it made your life even harder, you know, with your quest to find water on a daily basis?
You know, it's a matter of um we've we've there's been, from what I hear, there's been a way that the people, the residents, have found a way to get water from the municipality. They speak of a a tap. There's a tap that they've been able to access because they say that they're tired of waiting for the municipality to hear their cries. And I actually agree with them because we've been waiting for a very long time. And COVID-19 has has resulted in a lot of mental problems, like mental illness problems, because, like I said before, this is a low income community. People don't have jobs. People are already struggling to make ends meet. And people have businesses here that they use to make an income. And even I've been unemployed, even though I've been unemployed way before COVID-19. But the fact that um, we have to struggle to get water, even though we have been struggling before COVID-19. We thought that perhaps with the pandemic going on, the government would at least try to give us water at least 2 times a week, but that's not been happening. Even the last time I spoke to the spokesperson, he'd say something about a plant in uh, the northern Lepella Northern Water. He spoke about it as if it's something that was going to happen, but we're still waiting. We're
Yeah.
still waiting. We've been waiting for a very long time for these people to actually hear our cries. We've reached out a couple of times, but they've come here. Even the local municipality has come here. We've had meetings, but it seems that our plea falls on deaf ears. They're not willing to listen, and it's been hard to maneuver the pandemic already because the water that we get, it's we use 1,200 liters of Jojo tanks. That's the ones that we use. Those are the ones that we use. And the water that is in the 1,200 liters of water, it's not enough to sustain you for a month. It's
Mm.
not enough to sustain you for a month. And sometimes we even go longer periods without water. So I'm obviously not gonna wash my hands around the clock. I'm obviously gonna make sure that I use the water in a way in a way that in a way that I would make sure that it withstands me the amount of time that the government would be willing to give us water.
So you know that you've been part of the program that where we're teaching and mentoring journalists on how to do human rights reporting. What are some of the specific obstacles and challenges that you've been facing in the course of doing your story?
Actually, the water one, I had to take a different angle because the first one I wanted to write about the local primary school not having water. And people have not been willing to cooperate with me when it comes to interviews. They've been scared. They say that they're scared because when you speak about corruption, it means that names are going to be named, information is going to be put out there, people are going to know what's going on. And people have been telling me that, even if I tell you the information and and you don't name me as a source, they're obviously going to know that it's me. So there's a bit of paranoia going on there. And I don't really blame them. This is a different, this is a foreign territory for them because they're not used to voicing their opinions regarding things that are happening around the community. So it has been a bit of a challenge. And the ones that are willing to speak to me, like the one that I interviewed for this story, he was willing to speak to me because he had previously spoken to the media.
Okay.
So it's someone who's actually used to the industry, to the journalism industry, and he understands it very well. So I wouldn't say that it's the education. I wouldn't say that it's ignorance. People are just scared. They're really scared.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sulu, for that. As we all know, the right to water is a fundamental human right provided for in the Bill of Rights. And the Chapter 2 of South Africa's Constitution also provides that everyone has the right to access sufficient food and water. And in order to give effect to this right, Parliament has enacted the Water Services Act 108 of 1997. And the purpose of
Mm.
this act is to provide the right to basic water supply and basic sanitation services. The Water Services Act also provides that everyone has a right to access basic water supply and sanitation services, and everywhere water services institutions work, they must make sure that they take the necessary steps to realize these rights. Every municipality must plan in its water services and development plan to realize these rights. So is the government doing enough for the community of Elandsgrau? Now, Francina, you were recently quoted in an article about Human Rights Day in South Africa, saying that human rights no longer hold any meaning in the country today. What do you think is the problem here? Why is government refusing to protect or to provide people with their basic human rights, as we see in this particular story? Francina, it looks like we may have lost Francina there for a second. I don't even know how to get in touch with her. Francina. Okay, I'm gonna pause for a second and see if I can get her on the phone. Let me just pause. So Francina, as a human rights activist, you were recently quoted in an article about Human Rights Day in South Africa, saying that human rights no longer hold any meaning in the country today. What do you think is the problem here? Why is government either refusing or failing to provide people with their basic human rights, such as access to sufficient water, as we see in this particular story?
Okay, thank you for having me and greetings to the listeners. Problem number one is that most of the government officials who are sitting in those offices, they don't have proper documentation or they are not legit to be sitting in those offices. That's why they fail to implement everything that is needed for the communities. If you are in an office where you are needed to give service delivery and you know nothing about service delivery, that's gonna be a problem for you to do your job, because now you just working just to get a salary. You are not working there as a person who will be doing her duties well, and that affects us as communities, because that leads to toys, that leads to protests, that leads to the mob justice, where communities will be taking their frustration to the streets. That is a challenge where the government needs to make sure that whoever sits in whatever portfolio they are given, there need to be the legit people who will be able to make sure that service deliveries are being rendered for communities.
Okay, so in your opinion, how has the COVID-19 increased maybe violation or a lack of protection of basic human rights, in your opinion?
In my opinion, the government doesn't consult the communities on what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, and even those who are living in the rural areas. If you ask them what is COVID-19, it's very difficult for them to explain for you, because it's a hearsay from them. The government is not there to give communities information, relevant information. Number one, you don't have access of water. How are you going to wash your hands frequently while you don't have water to drink, to cook? Then you're going to use that water and save it so that you can be able to drink and eat. People don't have money to buy sanitation. How will they buy sanitizers You can't take your money and buy a sanitizer while you don't have bread in your house. You can't buy Dettol or bleach or whatever while you don't have meal in the house. And this thing of corruption, where they said they will support communities with food passes, it never happened. And that is an effect also, because now communities are affected by COVID-19. Most of communities who are living under poverty, they didn't survive, because now how will you get a nutritious meal? How will you be able to get access of water just to drink? Those are other things. They don't know how to use necessary measures for them to be safe. Those are other things that affect the communities, especially in the rural areas. Those who are in the urban areas, information flows frequently, and those who are in the rural areas, there's no information on whatever ways to protect themselves. Thank you.
So what can communities do? Like, as you would just explain now, that government is not interested, they don't employ the right people. So what can communities do to make sure that government does the right thing going forward?
Number one is holding the government accountable. We need human rights monitors in all the villages, so that they can be able to report whatever violation is happening, and also keep the records on when you did get the report and how did you deal with it, so that we can be able to take the municipality to court on saying you didn't do service deliveries for the community, because without keeping records, there's no way you can take the municipality to court. Communities have a right to take municipality to court when they violate their rights, when they don't give them service deliveries, because in their municipal act, they have to provide services to the communities, and they don't have to violate communities' rights. And as communities, we have a document that gives us support, like the Constitution. Whatever is in the Constitution, it's not implemented. If the Constitution can be implemented the same as the policies, then we will be faced by all these human rights violations that are happening around the community.
Okay, thank you so much, Francina Nkosi, for joining us today, and to you also, Tulufelo Dufue. And we're looking forward to seeing your story coming out. And that's all we have time for here on Spotlight today, a series focusing on the impact of COVID-19 on human rights in South Africa. This series is brought to you by Journalists for Human Rights in partnership with Media Monitoring Africa and Sound Africa. You can get in touch with us by sending an email to info@soundafrica.org. Tulu's story will appear on mukurukurumedia.co.za. You can go there to see it, or you can subscribe to our Facebook page to read the full story in the coming days. Thank you to our guests for coming, and to you for watching. Until next week, stay safe and sound.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Human beings are